Boston burst into flames after it ran off a runway during takeoff Tuesday morning, but nobody was seriously hurt, authorities say. Day 4 of negotiations to try to win the release of 17 hostages in Haiti, members of a missionary group.
Right. So how are you doing?
This is AP
Pastor?
News.
I am doing great. Did you get my text?
Will not block a vaccine
my
requirement.
friends hearing you sing at that memorial?
Oh my goodness. That was from Mrs. Cruzat.
The court has previously rejected.
Oh my goodness. You know, I've been in school with her kids since kindergarten. In some shape, form, or fashion, we have been in college, grammar school, high school, and college together. I've known her since I was 5. You know, and my mother used to drop me off at their apartment, and she would or Edward or Savara would walk Liza and I over to school, you know, because in
Security Secretary
you don't attend full day of
and is isolating at home.
of kindergarten.
Says DA.
So I've just known her
AP News.
all of my life.
It's
like, wow.
WCPT.
Well,
whatever you sang, it blew them away.
Oh, that is so sweet. Oh my goodness. Well, you know, you told me.
That's right.
Like a lovely school marm. So, you know, I pulled out some different music because I'm just having to redo my schedule in order to make that happen. You know how it is. And so I can get my voice in the right shape. It's just a lot of little stuff that you know how it is. And so now I'm dedicating myself to doing that. How about that? But I'm having to get some rest. That's the thing.
No one could be happier than me.
Oh, well, I would be very happy to hear you too. So there we go. But you know, now you got big stuff. With your being a pastor, I mean, wow. That's huge.
Panera believes in saying yes to clean, fresh ingredients.
I'll stop by one of these Sundays and sing for you with you. How about that?
Yes to putting it on a sandwich.
That will be fantastic.
I promise you I'll do it. I just need to, I'm working on Sundays, so I'm trying to knock a few of these things out.
Delivery when you order on our app.
Cool, but I'm so glad that you're here with us today. And so let me bring this up. Thank you, everybody, for being with us today.
So what is it?
You know,
it's not poverty that causes
now,
crime.
Pastor Vicky, what do you make of them? This is the 7th anniversary. Could you bring the radio down just a bit, Paul? Can you believe that they are going to hold this hearing, this confirmation vote on the anniversary of this boy's death?
A big pile of cookies, and
I think it is
all the other kids, and watch what happens.
the most disrespectful
Weekdays 11 a.m.
thing.
to 2 p.m. on WCPT.
And and it's only, I think that just by bringing it up, we've been it's now become a headline because I got a call from several people yesterday.
30.
And they said they've been asked, well, why is this such a big deal? Some of the biggest reporters.
Shelters
Like
and our
unbelievable.
sponsors,
And you need to bring the radio down just a bit, Paul.
Mark Drugs, to talk about why rescue is best. It's all on
15.
Paul, can you bring the radio down at all?
See our current adoptable at WCPT.
Thank you.
820.com.
Thanks so much.
This is WCPT 820. Facts matter. 5.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It is Wednesday, October 20th, 2021. I'm Santita Jackson, coming to you from WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you today. I want you to meet my morning stars over on my YouTube channel, the Santita Jackson Show. All right, Francis and Daryl and Glennis, meet Dave. Jarvis, get on over there. And Evangelist, Jess, please get on over there. Francis, Joyce, Shirley from beautiful Philadelphia, and Andre, my brother here, my god brother here in Chicago, Linda, and Mark. Is it Marquette or Marquette? Just let me know how to pronounce your name properly. Everybody, let's like and subscribe on the Santita Jackson Show on YouTube, and like and share on the Santita Jackson and Friends page on YouTube. We've got to continue this talk about Rahm Emanuel. The confirmation vote will be held today. He has enough support on the Republican and Democratic sides, we do believe, to become the ambassador for Japan. But should he become that? And what do you make of the hearing being held on the 7th anniversary of the killing of Laquan McDonald? Come on, everybody. What do you make of that? Then we're going to talk about Henrietta Lacks. Who's Henrietta Lacks? She is called the mother of modern medicine. Black woman who died, she was ravaged by cancer more than 60 years ago. And her cells were taken, and they've been cloned over and over and over again. They are called the immortal cells of Henrietta Lacks. They can't die. And pharmaceutical firms have made billions off of her cells, which they took from her body without her family's permission, by the way. And they don't want to give the family any money at all. What do you think of that? We've got to talk about that, because we also have to talk about J&J. Many women, black women in particular, were told to use baby powder to stay fresh. They have known for at least 4 decades that the baby powder had carcinogens in it. So a lot of women have developed cancer, and they've been trying to establish a link. In some cases, that link has been established. We got a lot to talk about today on the Santita Jackson Show. So let's get to it, everybody. Let's get right to it. Got a lot to talk about today, and some things that are going to spill over until tomorrow, into tomorrow, shall I say. Chicago, we're going to have a high of 71 degrees. Enjoy it, everybody. It's about to cool off. It'll be partly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, 57 degrees will be the high, and it will be rainy up there. The Dow closed up 198 points. The Nasdaq closed up 107 points. The S&P 500 closed up 33 points. The NBA season has begun, and the champions, Milwaukee, well, they bested the Brooklyn Nets. 127 Milwaukee, 104 Nets. And, well, the Bulls will be playing the Pistons tonight, and the Timberwolves will be playing the Rockets tonight. Cannot wait for those results, everybody. I love the NBA season, don't you? And we are looking at, oh my goodness, we're in the midst of, the race toward the World Championship in Major League Baseball, and at least in American Major League Baseball. Well, the Dodgers, they eked out one over Atlanta yesterday, 6-5. And the Astros, well, they have evened up the series with the Red Sox. Astros 9, the Red Sox 2. Wow. What is going to happen with that? Everybody, can you believe the Yankees are not in it? I cannot. It's hard for me to even fathom. The FDA plans to allow a mix and match approach to COVID-19 booster shots, meaning people can get a different vaccine for their booster dose than they did for their original doses. Last week, the FDA vaccine advisors reviewed research from National Institutes of Health that suggested that it really didn't matter which type of booster people got. It still provided more protection. We can't wait to get some confirmation about this from Dr. Deborah Furholden, because she told us to be a little bit more specific than that when she was on the show yesterday. President Biden has dictated the first cuts to the pared-down economic spending bill. Tuition-free community colleges out, despite being a major White House priority. The child tax credit, another key priority, would likely be extended for only 1 more year, which is much shorter than many Democrats wanted. Other provisions for elder care, disability care, and paid leave benefits may also be on the chopping block. What do you think about that, everybody? I mean, we are losing free college, and that is those of you who need to be retrained. That would be out for new jobs. Yeah, that would be out. Senate appropriators supported a 5% increase in defense spending for the fiscal year, $10 billion more than they even asked for. And yet we're getting all of these cuts in the Build Back Better bill. What do you think about that? And let me tell you what else is even more insidious. Now, President Biden's plan is going to pit Black and brown people against each other. Hispanic serving colleges will be pitted against HBCUs, according to this Politico report. It's setting up a conflict between Hispanic serving colleges and historically Black institutions, because they will both be vying for the same resources. Now, Representative Raul Grijalva, who is one of the leading progressives, says it's a resource question. We should not be getting into robbing Peter to pay Paul or fighting over an amount that doesn't satisfy the needs of respective groups of people. He cautions that a competition for resources could create strife between education advocates who could benefit from an allyship. He said it's difficult only because I don't want to add to a division that is unnecessary right now. Advocates for Latino students have rallied throughout the summer and fall to make sure Latino students aren't shortchanged. Undocumented students could get access to federal financial aid through the social spending package. HBCUs, everyone, that has been part of reparations, a few reparations that African Americans got coming out of slavery. So let us not fight with each other. Let us work with each other and let us get the resources that we need to educate all of our children, everybody. The Democrats are scrambling for Plan C as Joe Manchin has dashed their dreams. That's what they're saying. So what do you think about that? What do you think about that? We're going to be talking about that today and tomorrow. In a first, surgeons have attached a pig kidney to a human, and it worked, everybody. Surgeons in New York have successfully attached a kidney grown in a genetically altered pig to a human patient and found that the organ worked normally. A scientific breakthrough that could one day yield a vast new supply of organs for severely ill patients. Mayor Lightfoot here in Chicago is hoping that police officers will not, quote, ruin their careers over a vaccine reporting order. Despite reporting that over two-thirds of Chicago employees have confirmed their vaccination status to the city, Mayor Lightfoot is feeling pressure about the number of police officers who have not. Union leaders have said that nearly one-third of Chicago Police Department officers have refused to report their vaccination status, risking losing their police powers. Mayor Lightfoot downplayed the numbers and claimed only a small number have done so, and in response have been placed on a no-pay status, and disciplinary process will proceed from there. What do you think is going to happen, everybody? What do you think is going to happen? And yesterday, Chicago groups united with a message to reject Rom. We're going to be talking about that at the bottom of the hour. In the meantime, we have got one of my favorite people in the world with us today, one of my favorite singers, too, someone I've admired since I was a little girl, and I'd watch her sing, and I watched Pastor Vicky go. She wasn't a pastor then, but now she is the pastor of the St. Thomas Lutheran Church here in Chicago. It's on 80th and Jeffrey. Let me slow down because many of you said you won't go to Santita, you're going too fast. 80th and Jeffrey, 8000. 8000 Jeffrey, 80th and Jeffrey. And it's at from 11:45 to 12:15, a half hour of power. You don't want to miss it. And if you meet Pastor Vicky, she's Miss Hospital Corner. So it's all done in a very, very safe way. I've never seen a hair out of place with you ever. So there we have it. But I love it. How are you today? We need some good news, Pastor Vicky.
Yes, we do need good news. Good morning, Santita. Good morning to your morning stars and friends. There is good news. Today, I want to salute Professor Timuel Black, who died last week at the age of 102 and whose life will be celebrated this weekend. I salute him not only because his parents migrated from Chicago to Chicago from Birmingham, Alabama, when he was an infant and he grew up and did well. I salute Professor Black not only because he assembled attendees for the historical 1963 March on Washington with the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. I salute Professor Black not only because he urged Harold Washington to run for mayor of the city of Chicago and raised funds to put his money where his mouth was. I salute Professor Black not only just because he worked with the 1984 and the 1988 presidential campaigns of the Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson. I salute Professor Black not just because he was a mentor to the young Barack Obama, who would later go on to be the first Black president of these United States of America. Today, I salute Professor Timuel Black because he was my husband's high school history teacher at Hyde Park High School at a time when he needed someone like him the most. You see, my husband's father died in June in my husband's last year in high school. He had to secure a full-time employment at CPC International in Argo, Illinois, to make up for the loss of income to the household. After working a full shift, he would make it to class and fall asleep daily. Professor Black was concerned and asked him, "Why are you sleeping in my class?" My husband explained the situation. In his compassion, Professor Black told him to sit at the back of the class and put his head down if he needed to. But just do your homework, he said. That compassion for a young Black man who had just lost his father made a difference in his life. Because of Professor Timuel Black, the boy he allowed to sleep did not drop out of school, but is now Pastor Marion Johnson Sr., an upstanding man in society and a servant of the people of his congregation and his community. Romans 13:7 says, "Render therefore to all their dues, tribute to whom tribute is due, custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear, and honor to whom honor." I salute Professor Timuel Black and all other teachers who have made a difference in our lives. Think of a teacher who made a difference in your life and salute them today. They deserve it. If you can do this, and I'm sure you will, then to me, that's good news.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much. You know, just before we came on the air, everybody, Pastor Johnson, who I've known you since I was about 5 or so, since I was a baby.
Yes.
I think I was talking about Mrs. Mildred Cruzat. Many of us might have seen her on Windy City Live. 94 years of age, dancer, really a force of nature. And she was a real fixture here in Chicago. She made her transition a couple months ago. We memorialized her a couple of weeks ago at the Apostolic Church of God. And thank God for Pastor Brazier and Evangelist Knuckles and that wonderful group of godly people there. And I was recounting to you the impact that she had on my life, just the little kindnesses. You know, my mother was able to drop me over at the Cruzat's home, and then she or Edward or Savara would walk us over to, Liza and I over to kindergarten. And then my first grade teacher, I missed a lot of school, in my first grade, and maybe maybe it was about 3 months in total. And she asked my mother, she said, "I can pass her, but I don't want to do that. Would you let me keep her and let me teach her second grade? Because I want to make sure that she has her basics down." Because I really think that I think that there's something there. And I don't want to pass her on. I want her. And that woman saved my life. Miss Irene B. Smith saved my life. She bought me my first book bag. She got me my first library card. And she completely changed my life. Completely changed my life. So I want to thank you. And I think if I'm going to have to do something in her honor, I do every day because I think of her every day. I wouldn't have the joy of reading and the joy of researching that I do without her. And we all have that one person. It might not have been a teacher, more than likely it was. There's someone who changed your life, who changed the trajectory of your life. And if they're on this side of eternity or on the other side, say thank you today. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. I mean, just, son, go in the back of the classroom. All I ask is that you get your homework in and you come to me if you need some extra help. I will help you. Changed your husband's life. And then changed all the people who he would minister to.
Right.
And your life.
Of course,
It just,
yes.
it just keeps on going. Oh, everybody, thank you
And
for
of
that.
course, Lena McLean
Oh my
changed my
gosh.
life.
Well, she changed
Yes.
it. Just
So many
knowing,
lives.
just knowing that she recognized your gift and
Mm-hmm.
cultivated it.
Yes.
Just wow, wow. We've had some real gems. We've had some real gems. We've had some real gems. And so I want to thank you for that. Everybody think of that today. That's why we need to think of these teachers and pay them and honor them in ways that we do not now. We've got to do that. Got to do that. Hey, Abraham, this is my sweetie out of Venezuela. I have to give him some special love today. He said, "You're not giving me any love." Got to do that for him today. See right there, Pastor Johnson. Of course, we've got Dr. Deborah Verholden, who's going to be joining us again at the top of the hour because we want to look at the Henrietta Lacks case and what's happening with Johnson and Johnson, but particularly Henrietta Lacks, who's being called the mother of modern medicine. Her cells were taken without her family's permission, essentially stolen. The big pharma has made billions of dollars off of her cells, and they have not. Her family have not been paid one thin dime. But we're talking with this brilliant epidemiologist, the Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University. We talked to her about, we've been focusing on COVID-19, but she said, Santita, we need to expand that because we've got a lot to talk about. And so going forward, I promise you, we will be doing that. But there are a couple of COVID questions that I got to ask you before we talk about Rahm Emanuel at the bottom of this hour. We're going to have a quick update about that. 7th anniversary of his killing today. And Rahm Emanuel is poised to get a promotion. Wow. Dr. Deborah Verholden, it has now been determined that you can mix and match these vaccines. So that's official. Let me ask you this. What should people do when they go to get the booster? Because I certainly don't want people, you said yesterday that you shouldn't mix the J&J with the Pfizer and the Moderna. How do we avoid that?
That is, yes, that has not been approved. And again, I just keep encouraging people. This is not one of those things where you want to, and I've heard even some of our nation's leaders say, do what's on your heart, make your own decision, use your best judgment. We don't have enough information for it to be well-informed judgment if you're going, outside of what the recommendations are. So I'm asking everybody, let's follow the FDA recommendation for vaccination, third dose, booster dose, and then the CDC will back that up. If it is not approved, by no means go and just take matters into your own hands and do it on your own. Because a lot of people I know have done that also.
They have done it.
So what happens is when you go to they have done it. They have just gone into a place and pretended as if they're getting newly vaccinated and got themselves the third dose. They've done it. And we know that it's happened. It's unfortunate because, when you go to a pharmacy and you try to get a prescription filled, when you go to put it in, it will say whether or not, because the systems are now mostly communicating with each other. We got people, we call them doctor shoppers. They'll go around and shop for different doctors that'll give them prescriptions, and they'll get the same prescription for 3 or 4 doctors and take it to 3 or 4 different pharmacies. So we put all kinds of things in place, electronic prescription drug monitoring programs and all this kind of other stuff. We don't have that for this. All the data is going into a central database, but it's not like that's happening in real time, and it's not like that real-time system is kicking back information to the person administering the vaccine, saying, whoa, this person isn't eligible, or this person has already received their doses, or it's too early. If you go to take your prescription into the pharmacy, I don't know if you've ever done this. I've done it, been traveling or going away, so I need to get my prescription filled a little bit early since I'll be gone when it comes due. Mm-hmm. And the computer will kick it back to say, nope, you can't get it refilled until such and such a day.
Absolutely.
We don't have that in place for this. But we don't have that for this. We don't. And it's unfortunate because there are people who have literally gotten all of the vaccines. They've got all 3 of them. They took matters into their own hands. They made the decision that they made. They went and did that. I don't want people to do that. That's just not good.
Well, I've got 2 minutes before we go. A minute and a half. Is it safe? Or do we even know?
The third shot?
Yeah, no, just to get it before this has been approved. I'm just wondering, because, no one wants COVID-19. And a lot of us are making decisions that are fear-based, Dr. Deborah Verholden. And that's what I'm seeing. There's just a lot of fear. I don't want this. I got it, it's not as effective as it was. And so, 1 minute.
Here's what I would say about that, and I get it. And I feel just tragic to me the way the public health messaging around this has just been so terrible, and the rollout. But imagine if you're trapped in a space and the water is rising up to meet you, and you're afraid, so you just keep moving your hands to try to get your head above the water. Eventually, the water's going to overtake you, right? It's just a matter of time. What I always say is if the water is not rising up to meet you, dive in and look for another way out. Don't stand there and just let the water eventually overtake you. Dive in, take a good deep breath, dive in and look for a way out. Because people grapple with this decision around the COVID vaccine. Dive in. Do the research for yourself. Look
1 minute.
on the FDA website. Talk to people who've gotten the vaccine. Look for trusted messengers. Look at the National Medical Association website and what they said. Look at the Rainbow Push Coalition website and the Public Health Manifesto that we created in May of last year, calling for equity in all COVID resources, including when a safe and effective vaccine was available. Do the work. If you're pregnant, go to the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology website and see what they have to say about the vaccine for pregnant and women who are lactating or women who are thinking about becoming pregnant. Don't go on Facebook and look up Dr. So-and-so who just like
do not
don't do that.
Do not doctor shop, everybody. Dr. Verholden is going to be back with us as we talk about Henrietta Lacks. That's a big case, and I cannot wait to get your thoughts about this. Big Pharma's reaping billions while her family's making nothing, and the cells were taken without the family's permission. Right now, Rahm Emanuel, Laquan McDonald, it's the 7th anniversary of his killing. He is poised to get a big promotion today. What do you think about that? 773-763-9278. Santita Jackson Show. I'm going to send you an article I came across from the Jerusalem Post. If the chickenpox vaccine lasts 20 years, why not the COVID-19 shot? I'm going to send that to you so you can, because I've been getting questions like that along those lines.
Yeah.
And I want you to, we trust you, so you got it.
Well, it's interesting. One of your callers the other day said something, and this is like my concern. I call it the goalposts of information. A lot of people have these goalposts of information. So they've got a bit of information over here, they've got a bit of information over here. But in between those two goalposts is just a massive. People go from goalpost to goalpost, but not realizing they're falling in the gap of misinformation. One of the callers said,
We have Ms. Noel.
Okay, Noel.
They say that the people with the best immunity is somebody who has both been vaccinated and contracted COVID. So why don't we vaccinate people and then expose them so they can just get it over with and have the best immune response? And I just thought that's 2 bits of information that are true. It is true that people who have both had COVID and been vaccinated seem to have the most, on average, right? There's exceptions to that, but on average, tend to have the most robust immune response and seem to have the most protection from future infection or future complications right now. And it's true that, those 2 basic points are true, is my point.
Okay.
And we have Mr. McKee.
Is that there's no guarantee, even if you're vaccinated and you contract COVID, that you won't get sick. The likelihood is greatly, greatly reduced. The likelihood of you being hospitalized or dying is greatly, greatly reduced. But it's not a guarantee.
But
you wouldn't just expose yourself because it's not chickenpox. Chickenpox is something that the majority of children who get it, they just recover from it. It's harder on adults, but the majority of children who get chickenpox just recover from it. But just figured out. Yeah.
No. Because I don't want to cut you off, but I got to go to the next segment. But that's why I want you to talk about that, because I got that out of the Jerusalem Post, and I read a lot of different newspapers from around the world, as do you. Particularly, Israel is interesting because they only use the Pfizer vaccine. And they're one of the most vaccinated countries on earth. So I'm always watching to see, have they achieved herd immunity? They have not. Have hospitalizations gone down? No, it has not. But, but has the severity of illness gone down? In some cases not. So there's just a lot, boosters, but they're not doing Moderna. They're not doing J&J. So there's just a lot. And then when you tell me that there are many other vaccines all around the world, I'm like, goodness gracious, this is a whole lot. A whole lot.
Well, and you got to get countries that are going to be, when you don't share the recipe, people reverse engineer their way back to it. And so, when people don't, patents actually have pushed a lot of countries to create knockoff brands of medications and other things, because, any kind of basic scientist can go in the lab and, analyze a drug vaccines are a little bit different, but there's enough out in the public domain, I think, that people are, in these labs all across the country are able to come up with their own homemade version
well,
of the,
Well, you've got scientists all over the world who are brilliant, and,
30.
at some point, but I'm going to let you go because I got to thank you, Kristen. No, we'll thank Dr. Furholden. We'll get you back at the top of the hour. And then we're going to Kristen Noel.
Yes.
How are you? You're all, we talk about
15.
these vaccines and health. And Dwight McKee is here. So stay right there, but I'm coming right to you. Oh, boy. So much, everybody.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. I want to hear your thoughts. 773-763-9278. 773-763-WCPT. WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, is my home, as is AM 950 Radio in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and all over the world. We've got Abraham from Venezuela. We've got Vanderlei from Brazil. We've got Daryl. We've got Dave from Canada. We've got you from all over the world and all over this country listening to the show. Please like and share if you are on the Santita Jackson and Friends page, and like and subscribe. Please go over to the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Thank you all so much for beginning to go over there and populate it and grow those numbers. We need you so much, and we thank you for your support every day. Let's talk about Laquan McDonald and Rahm Emanuel. It seems that their names will forever be linked, names and even their fates. Of course, we remember Rahm Emanuel, former congressman, powerhouse in the Democratic Party, and he was the chief of staff to the first African-American president in the United States, in the history of the United States, Barack Obama. And in fact, he was one of his political mentors here in Chicago. That having been said, he wanted to do something else. And so from the White House, it was announced that he would run for the presidency, which was very exciting to people in Chicago because it was like the stamp of approval from President Obama. Well, a funny thing happened on the way to governance. He had a really hard time here. And then we saw the Laquan McDonald murder. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that because this 17-year-old boy, a child who was killed, couldn't get the tapes. Thank you, Jamie Calvin and the Invisible Institute, for doggedly pursuing the exposure of those tapes. It was his work that pushed and pushed, and he and some other people just pushed and pushed and pushed. And then when we saw the tapes, it was just shocking. And so let's get right to what we saw on the tapes and how it is on the 7th anniversary of the killing of Laquan McDonald. Rahm Emanuel could be used for a huge promotion. Becoming ambassador of Japan is one of the plum assignments. It just doesn't get any bigger than that. And so how is it that they would have the confirmation vote, the hearing on the day of this boy's murder, the anniversary? It's just unbelievable. Dwight McKee, noted social scientist from the National Action Network and Rainbow Push. But let me start with you, Kristen Noel. I love the work that Women's All Points Bulletin does Thank you for all that you do. You and Del Marie Cobb and so many others have been standing together, just representing all of us in Chicago who are appalled at this confluence of events. Talk to us, Laquan McDonald and and Rahm Emanuel. They just can't escape one another. And on the 7th anniversary of his killing, how did this happen?
Basically, the Biden administration, the United States, doesn't care about black people at all, unless they need our vote, you know. But it's amazing, right, that they could pick this date, and they're oblivious. I said tone deaf. They're just oblivious to what we want and what we need as a people, you know, and so that's how we get here. They didn't even move the date, didn't think of moving the date as a sign of a little respect. You know, they're just going to push him through, most likely. But we're always on a rail against Rahm being a politician ever again in his life. And if he goes to Japan, I hope Japan keeps him forever because we don't want him back.
Well, do you think that that's really going to happen? Because it seems that he's been rehabilitated. We're talking with Krista Noel of the Women's All Points Bulletin. And I just want to know if, because he left the mayor's office really pretty much in disgrace. But then it turns out he made a lot of money. Then he was able to come back on television as a highly respected, or certainly he was put in respectable positions as a political pundit, where he railed against progressives and progressive policies, right? And now you see him. Now he has been given one of the plum assignments, one of the choicest assignments in all of American diplomacy, world diplomacy, U.S. ambassador to Japan. Could the Senate seat of Dick Durbin be next? I mean, it seems like he's deep in the game, Krista. He's still in the running for power.
Well, absolutely. I don't have any doubt that he wants to be probably the first Jewish president of the United States. And you know, this is the path to take, right? Get your international chops, right? And then come back to the United States, go for a Senate seat. Yeah, that would be funny if he went for Durbin's seat, since Durbin supports him, right? Unless Durbin is planning on leaving. And then move towards the presidency. They've even said that he wanted to be governor of Illinois. I just wish he would just leave Illinois alone. But he's been underneath Clinton and Obama, so there's no doubt where he wants to go and what he wants to be. So this is the path, and he is definitely going to take it. We want Japan to reject him. If the United States doesn't, then Japan should reject him. As I was saying yesterday, Japan is known for its traditions that deal with saving face and honor, right? So Japan should say that maybe you could pick someone else. But supposedly there's some fear between the U.S. and Japan of China. So they're going to come together and keep China from doing anything. And, you know, I'm like, you can't keep China from doing what China is going to do. So that's a lost cause. But, you know, this is what they're saying they're sending Rahm there for. You know, and his ability to get money, right? To make money. That $13 million that he made, almost outrageous.
Everybody, what do you think? What do you think? I know we've been bringing this up since Monday, but it was something that when you went to Google, you could not even find this on the radar, Krista Noel, Dwight McKee. You could not find it. You couldn't, when you said Laquan McDonald and and Rahm Emanuel. The only thing that came up was a story from Common Dreams. That's how I found it. And as you point out, they have not even thought about moving the date of this hearing today, the date of this confirmation vote, because there is so little respect, so little respect. Dwight McKee, what are your thoughts about holding this confirmation vote on this day, on the anniversary of the killing of Laquan McDonald? Because I've spoken to people who've been speaking to very prominent people in media, and they're bewildered. They say, well, what's the big deal? Dwight McKee.
Well, first, this shouldn't even be Japan's option. They shouldn't even have an opportunity to have to reject this nomination because they didn't put Biden in office. We did. This was our folks that put Biden in office. This is an issue that we need to have dealt with and to deal with, is that anytime somebody has such disrespect for you, that in your face they're telling you that your opinion don't mean anything, then believe that. We should take that very, very, very personally. And we should really, right now, the Black Caucus should be sitting down with Warren and Bernie and saying the next time around, you all will be our nominee. Could you imagine if Biden would have nominated Farrakhan to become the ambassador to Saudi Arabia? Even though Farrakhan has the same religion, speaks the language, knows the people, the Jews in this country and all around the world would be insulted. They would close down the economy before they allowed it to happen. And yet, we kind of grin and bear it.
Why is that? Why is that?
Well, I don't think we're grinning.
Well, why is there not? Well, let me ask both of you. Why is there not a huge outcry? Because when we finally saw the tapes, the video of the killing of Laquan McDonald, everyone felt that it would be the game changer, if you will, and it was. I mean, in fact, ultimately, it led to Rahm Emanuel saying that he would not go up for re-election. He wanted to be re-elected, but the fact is, he was so unpopular, he had to bow out. We're not hearing a lot about this. You're not seeing people march in the streets, Kristen Noel. You're not. There's some of us who are outraged, but it's not gained a lot of traction. And I think that the people in Washington and the people in these powerful positions are paying attention to that, Krista.
Well, he's removed. He's being removed, and there's so many fights, right? That some think that this just isn't a fight to take up, right? We're still fighting police violence. We were just in the street for George Floyd. Internationally, we have the George Floyd Resolution. We have the Permanent Forum for People of African Descent. And we've been fighting for things internationally. So internationally, this is not good, right? But international work doesn't usually fall to the streets. It did in 2014. It was behind the Laquan McDonald march, the Rekia Boyd marching. It's behind, the push for police violence. And people are like, look, we still have to deal with what's here. That's him going to Japan. We're against it, but let him go, right? So we're not grinning and bearing it. We're just saying that it is not a top priority, okay? But it is something that we do not want to bear. It is embarrassing. It is hurtful. It is traumatizing, but not as traumatizing as the actual killing of Laquan, the actual killing of George Floyd, the actual killing of Rekia Boyd, and the many other people who have been killed by police. And Rahm can go and be in Japan. A lot of people feel that way. Like I said, if they must do this, then leave him there, right? Don't let him come back. If Japan wants him, Japan can have them, right? So I think that's the way a lot of people feel. We got things to do in the United States, and he's not going to bother us. But what they don't realize is that he's planning on coming back around and bothering us, right? And redeeming himself. And, Black people, we don't grin and bear, but we're good at forgiving, right? We're good at forgiving people for what they've done, right? Not holding grudges, right? And sometimes it works out. Sometimes we will vote them out.
No, but we hold them against each other. I don't know if we forgive, Krista. I think that there's some people we forego, right? I mean, because if forgiving people are at peace, we're not at peace. We take that pain that we feel, the insults we feel, and we bring them home. That's what we're doing.
And none of those bills are passed either. I mean, she talked about all the other things that we need to deal with. We've dealt with those, and none of those bills are passed. We still don't have a George Floyd bill. We still don't have police accountability. It is not like they only have put Rahm in our face. They have not pushed to pass the other legislation that we were promised, that we brought all the vote out for. So it's random. It's reckless. It's profound disrespect at every level. And at some point, we have to stop making excuses for these people and look and see what reality is. And the reality is these people don't care about us. They have their own agenda. It is a white supremacist agenda, just like Trump. It does not include us until it's convenient to get our vote, and then it's goodbye. The civil rights movement was a movement about its core dignity. Rosa Parks at some point wouldn't get off that bus because she was insulted. She was insulted to give this white man her seat. At some levels, you have to have a sense of self-respect and dignity and stop making excuses for these people. They don't care about us. And likewise, we need not care so much about them.
Well, and I think even beyond the caring is the respect. Because you can like me, not like me, care about me, not care about me, but the respect is what I'm talking about. And I think that is what we should really, really, really be concerned about. We need to get this caring and sharing and all that, not sharing, but caring out of our political vocabulary because it's not helpful and it's just not the way that politics works. Politics comes down to respect. That's it. And people who are respected, when you're out in these streets marching, people start moving. The powers that be start moving. What did Obama say to the Wall Street titans? He said, I'm the only one standing between you. I'm standing between you and the pitchforks. This is after the economy collapsed and he was elected. So wait a minute. There is something profoundly wrong about this. Profoundly wrong. And it ought to be a priority right now. Right now. Because for them I cannot believe, now that they know, Kristen Noel, now that they know that this hearing is being held on the anniversary of this boy's murder, because it was a murder, no one has made any effort to move it over, as you pointed out. No effort at all. It's just take it, y'all. Take it. I mean, not to mention the fact that 2 free years of college have been thrown out the window on the Build Back Better plan. Elder care is taking a hit. I mean, my goodness. What is, just broadly speaking, what is going on here, Krista? Where do you see us going from here? Because this is so insulting. It's like they're just telling you, you'll take anything, and I know that you will. Take this. Because you know what? What you don't want is Trump. I'm like, honey, we lived through slavery. Black people can endure anything. Okay? What we should not endure is another insult, Krista.
I mean, what can you say to that, right? We definitely, this is our lives across the world, right? This is what African people deal with across the world. Insult after insult after insult. As long as they are in power, this will happen to us. But we are fighting we are fighting hard, right, to stop it from happening, right? They don't listen to us. You know, they don't listen to us even when they want our votes. They don't listen to us.
But you know, there have been times when they have historically. When we registered voters, when we have displayed power, we have been listened to.
Well, that's when our feet have been on the street and we've been marched, right? You know, but like you said, it's not happening now.
Yeah.
So they feel that this is a display of power, right? And it won't be a display of power until the women, Black women, who are the true voting bloc, decide that we're not going to have anything to do with Biden next time around, right? But when you give us Biden and then you give us Trump, I mean, we're intelligent enough not to take the bad choice. So we're in this catch-22 situation, you know, where we know that there is worse than Biden, right? So Biden can get away with doing this.
But what's worse than this?
It's like, how harm him? How do you let him know that this is just not what we want? Right? And it could be poetic justice.
See, I'm not so sure. How could this be poetic justice? Because I'm not sure that it gets worse than this.
He could get turned down today. That could be the poetic justice. That on the day that Laquan McDonald died, the Senate decides that they will not confirm him. They will not move it forward. I'm sorry, the Foreign Relations Committee decides that they will not confirm him on 10/20, right? 7 years later, you know, that would be poetic justice. So it could roll either way. It depends on whether or not they really care about us.
Well, right? No, I mean, it depends upon, I think, if we call or not. 202-224-3121. You need to call representatives. No, really, because caring, I don't care about you caring. I care about you respecting. You know, I've seen folks move when we have registered voters. I've seen people move when we have voted. I've seen people move when we have marched. Historically, that is what has happened. Right? I mean, Dr. King didn't have a love fest. He believed in love, and that he felt that loving was a radical act, no question about that. But he moved people. Reverend Jackson has moved people, registered more people than anybody in the history of the United States. What are we doing right now? We got more Black folks elected to office, more Black folks elected to the highest offices, and we're losing ground. How does that happen? And they're looking at confirming this man on the date of the killing of this boy. Oh my gosh. Dwight McKee, got a couple of minutes, and then I'm going to let Krista close us out. Dwight?
Well, it can be worse than Biden, but also can be better than Biden. Is that the reason they're so arrogant is because they feel like they have no options. Biden said at the beginning of the election, you already have no other options for me but me. That's not true. Bernie Sanders is an option to Biden. He could have gotten, if he'd have gotten the votes that we gave Biden, he'd be the president now. Elizabeth Warren is better than Biden. If she would have gotten the votes, then she'd be the president now. We have to look at our options. Your leverage in politics is exercising your options. And so we have to stop looking at these politicians who are operating off their own interest and listening to their voice and start looking at our own interest. I always wondered whether or not Ram worked for Barack or Barack worked for Ram. Because he has been at Ram's call, beck and call, every step of the way. And we have to, at some point, decide, is even Obama operating in our interest or his own? And mature politics and mature people have to make that determination for themselves. At some levels, we have to have an insult level.
Kristen Noel, Women's All Points Bulletin. Give us some marching orders for today.
All urban, right? All Duckworth. there's, why isn't there? Why don't they consider a Japanese American? Right. We have a Japanese American senator of Hawaii, Mazie Hirono.
Mm-hmm.
We have other Japanese Americans that could go into this position. Rahm is not the end-all pick, right? So call your senators. Realize that at the international level, there is the George Floyd resolution. It is AHRC 47 L.8 Revision 1. That has been passed at the international level. Also at the international level, there is now a permanent forum for people of African descent. We have to change the way they think about us across the diaspora. Start looking at how we as African people can fight against what I call white privilege and end it. Get involved.
Get involved. Everybody today, call 202-224-3121, 202-224-3121. Get involved. Reverend Dr. Johnny Coleman said it works when you work it. This system does work. Okay, and where it's broken, you can fix it. But if you don't get involved, it will not work. It works when you work it, and it does not work when you don't work it. Call 202-224-3121 if you have an insult level. If this is okay with you, that Rahm Emanuel could get a promotion on the day, on the anniversary of Laquan McDonald's death. If that's okay with you, okay, then let us go. If it's not okay, call 202-224-3121. And I'm speaking to white, black, brown, yellow, and red people, because any human being who has any ounce of feeling, a scintilla of it, you ought to be insulted by this. Let's talk about Henrietta Lacks. The immortal cells of this black woman whose cells were taken from her. The cells just can't die, and neither can the issue. Big Pharma has made billions of dollars off of her cells without her family's permission. They were not even asked if her cells could be removed from her body. And they have not made a dime. Not one dime. Not one dime. She's called the mother of modern medicine. Let's talk about it on the Santita Jackson Show back in a minute. Thank you, beautiful people, for being with us today.
All righty.
Thank you. I got to move on to Henrietta Lacks. Got to do that. Oh, my gosh.
That's a good one.
Oh, it's too much. It's just too much. Too much. Whew. But thank you, Miss Krista. It's wonderful meeting you.
You too. Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Oh, well, I cannot wait to have you back. Cannot wait to have you back.
Yeah, next time, let me know when you're going to talk about. I wrote a whole article on how they used our body and blood to make everybody healthy except for us.
Well, I would love to do that. Absolutely. Absolutely. There's some people who I'd love for you to meet. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Okay.
I'll get your email from Del Marie, and I'll send you the article.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I can't wait to see it.
Thank you.
Of course. Dwight, thank you so much, hon. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, everybody, call in. We're talking about Henrietta Lacks, with this legal Q&A with CK on the Santita Jackson Show. Today, we want to talk about that because it's something that is really, it's a big, big deal. And then, you look at the J&J, not the vaccine, but the J&J pharmaceutical company, which, of course, made the vaccine and manufactures it. Of course, the talcum powder, the baby powder. Many people have been told down through the years that, in order for a woman to be very fresh and lovely, that she needs to use talcum powder, the baby powder, in the most intimate spaces. Thank you so much, Paul. And the fact is, that's not only is that unnecessary, it is dangerous. And J&J has known for years, for decades, that the baby powder contains carcinogens. They know that. So we're going to get an update about that particular case because now they have that particular portion of J&J has filed for bankruptcy, so that you can't get any money. Come on, you guys. But we're going to talk about Henrietta Lacks and attorney C.K. Hoffler, legal Q&A with C.K. here on the Santita Jackson Show. We want to talk about Henrietta Lacks, the mother of modern medicine, attorney Hoffler. Wow. The mother of modern medicine.
Attorney Ward is on the line.
And then, of course, hey, Attorney Ward, how are you? Attorney Ward?
Good morning, Becky. Good morning, Becky.
Okay, I can hear something in the computer in the background. So make sure you all have that muted as well.
Hey, this is Navan.
Navan, how are you? I was trying to call you Attorney Ward.
Well.
Okay.
I answer everything.
Okay, we're trying to make sure that we got you. So we're going to do a brief update on what's happening with that case, but we want to dovetail into the Henrietta Lacks case.
Okay.
And, you know, so because we want people to know about that. We really, really, really do.
Mm-hmm.
Whew, there's so much.
Okay.
Yes, so much is going on.
There's a lot of stuff going on. How you doing? You know, I haven't followed that one as much. CK. Good morning, CK. How are you?
Good morning. I'm fine. How are you?
You can give an opinion on it.
At all.
You can just share your opinion. That's all you need to do.
I'm definitely I'll always have an opinion.
Look, please, 'cause I just think, you know, what's happening there is a lot. We're going to have Dr. Deborah Verholden join us as well. Brilliant epidemiologist. She's the Associate Dean of Public Health at Michigan State University.
Mm-hmm.
And Navan, it's really all in the context of how Black women's pain is underestimated, not considered, ignored.
Yeah.
How Black women, from a medical standpoint, are ignored, taken advantage of, just as we saw in Henrietta Lacks. And there are many, many, many Henrietta Lacks. We just don't know about them.
Okay, I think I can hear some paper rustling in the background. Okay, let's just get. Oh, Deborah, you're on?
You know I'm on.
Okay, I just saw your text. Okay. And I've got Dr. Deborah Verholden, of course, a noted epidemiologist, Associate Dean of Public Health out of Michigan State University. And she's at their medical school, actually. She's creating their School of Public Health. She's building it. But she comes out of Johns Hopkins University. We're so proud of her and all the great work that she does, really in equity. And we've got the legal Q&A with CK. And of course, please, I go from strength to strength. We open up the show with Dr. Deborah Verholden with her segment, and then we go to CK on Wednesdays, and then attorney Navan Ward. Wow.
Yeah,
Navan. Spell it. Pronounce it for me because I'm hearing it differently.
It's Navan.
Navan. Okay.
My mom pronounces it Navan. Now she could be wrong.
No.
But,
no.
You know,
my mother made me
correct
correct people on the pronunciation of my name all of my life when I had no front teeth. I had to come up with a T, honey. Yes, she did. She was not going to allow me to have a list because I missed my front teeth for a little bit. So I just want you. Carissa, you said you read the book about Henrietta Lacks. Very intriguing. It's a painful story. And it is a story we can only imagine, CK, how many times it's happened. But we want to hear from Navan, and then we're going to go right into this, okay? Okay, very good. Everybody off speaker, and just make sure your computers have been muted. Thank you so much. Hey, everybody, please go over to the Santita Jackson Show channel on YouTube. Please. Thank you, Dave. Thanks. You all are building up the numbers, and I want to thank you for that. Hey, Francis.
5.
I can hear something in the background, everybody. Okay.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world. We can change the world. Change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love. It's not too late. Gotta save the children. We can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show, coming to you from WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It's a joy to be with you today on Wednesday, October 20th, 2021, the 7th anniversary of the killing of Laquan McDonald. We have been talking about Rahm Emanuel, who is poised to get a big promotion. What do you think about that? He could become the ambassador to Japan, but only if you allow it. 202-224-3121, 202-224-3121. Let your congressman in the upper house, the senators, let them know how you feel, everybody. Let's talk about Henrietta Lacks today, the mother of modern medicine. Her cells were taken from her. Well, they were stolen without her permission, and they are the cells that do not die, the immortal cells of Henrietta Lacks, the HeLa cells. I'm going to talk about that with attorney C.K. Hoffler right here on her segment, Legal Q&A with C.K. on the Santita Jackson Show every Wednesday at this time. And we've got a lot to talk about today. Dr. Deborah Verholden is rejoining us for this, along with attorney Navan Ward, as he talks about the J&J case. You know, it seems that Black women have been experimented upon, and we're going to be talking about that. Because it's something that should impact all women and all human beings everywhere. Anytime anything unkind or unfair befalls any human being, all of us, no matter what our stripe, ought to be insulted. And we ought to fight for each other and fight against injustice, period. So let's get to some of these headlines so that we can get to the rest of the show. Chicago is going to have a high of 71 degrees, partly cloudy. Minneapolis, St. Paul, a high of 57 degrees. It will rain. The Dow closed up 198 points yesterday. The NASDAQ closed up 107 points, and the S&P 500 closed up 33 points. Major League Baseball, well, we are on the hunt for the prize. That is right. We're trying to get to the World Series. And the Dodgers, well, they were triumphant over Atlanta yesterday, 6-5. And the Astros are tied with the Red Sox in the series. They were triumphant last night, 9-2. The NBA season has kicked off, and the champions, the Milwaukee Bucks, well, they were triumphant over the Nets yesterday, 127-104. The Bulls will be facing off against the Pistons, and the Timberwolves will be facing off against the Red Sox. Against the Rockets, everybody. Getting all the stuff together, trying to keep it all straight. And the FDA plans to allow a mix and match approach to COVID-19 booster shots, meaning people can get a different vaccine if this approval goes through for their booster dose, which is not what happened with the original dose, everybody. We're going to continue to talk about that and follow that and wait to see if this is actually approved, everybody. President Biden has dictated the first cuts to the pared-down economic spending bill. Tuition-free college is out, despite being a major White House priority. The child tax credit, another key priority, well, it would likely only be extended for one more year, which is much shorter than Democrats wanted. Other provisions for elder care and disability care and paid leave benefits may also be on the chopping block, like paid family leave. They wanted 12 weeks. You'd only get 4 weeks. Wow. We're going to continue to look at that, and we will be talking about that tomorrow. But in the meantime, we are looking at, as we're looking at 2 years of college, community college being removed. Now the Biden plan is going to pit Black and brown people against each other. Hispanic serving colleges will be pitted against HBCUs, historically Black colleges and universities. They will be coming into the same pot. What about that? What do you think about that? Why are we being pitted against each other? According to Representative Raul Grijalva, who is a Democrat leading progressive out of Arizona, he said it's a resource question. We should not be getting into a robbing Peter to pay Paul situation or fighting over an amount that doesn't satisfy the needs of respective groups of people. Now, mind you, this is as the Pentagon has gotten $10 billion more than they asked for. And now Black and brown people are being pitted against each other. Pay attention, everybody. Pay attention, because Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema got just what they wanted. But are you getting what you need? Mayor Lori Lightfoot is hoping that Chicago police officers will not ruin their careers over the vaccine reporting order, despite reporting that over two-thirds of Chicago employees have confirmed their vaccination status to the city. Mayor Lightfoot is feeling pressure about the number of officers who have not. Nearly one-third, according to union leaders, have refused to report their vaccination status. And and Mayor Lightfoot's response was, what we are seeing is the number of folks who are actually, after being given the opportunities and even a direct order, saying no. It's a very small group of people. I'm not saying that there's going to be any disruption in our ability to keep our neighborhoods safe. Let's hope that that will be true. And today, Rahm Emanuel could become the ambassador to Japan. His hearing is set for today. Today is the anniversary, the 7th anniversary of the murder of Laquan McDonald. All right, everybody, let's get right to this legal Q&A with CK on the Santita Jackson Show. Got a lot of legal questions that we want to have answered, and it could be about marriage, divorce, palimony, alimony. I don't know, but this week we are talking about Henrietta Lacks, the immortal cells of Henrietta Lacks. Who is this woman? This woman who now, it seems that a part of her just cannot die. God bless her. God bless her. And the estate of Henrietta Lacks, his wife, this mother, this black woman who died of cervical cancer, very, very painful death. She had her cells taken from her, and her cells have been reused over and over again. They're called the HeLa cells. They became the first human cells to be successfully cloned. And they just don't die. And Big Pharma has made billions upon billions of dollars off of her pain, off of her suffering, without her family's permission. No one even asked them if they could take her cells. They just took them and kept on using them, and they have refused to pay the family one penny. What do you think about that? 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. I want to hear your thoughts, everybody. What do you think about that? Legal Q&A with CK. We've got another big issue that we're dealing with J&J, but not with the vaccines, with baby powder, something that many of us have been told that we need to use just to stay fresh and to be as clean as we possibly can. But that was not quite what happened. CK, lay out and set the table for us today. What are we looking at?
Absolutely. Good morning, Santita. We have dynamic guests this morning. You've mentioned Dr. Deborah Holden, the foremost epidemiologist, I believe, in the world.
Yes.
That's what she is. But we also have an extraordinary trial lawyer from Beasley Allen, Nate Van Moore. He's my co-counsel on the opioid litigation. He specializes in mass torts, and he's very engaged in the Johnson & Johnson litigation. And this is all tied together in a nice, terrible bow, if you will, with the Henrietta Lacks story, because something that people don't realize is that the cornerstone of modern medicine, so when we talk about that, the enabling of countless scientific and medical innovations were as a result of the tissue, those cells of Henrietta Lacks, including potentially the development of COVID vaccines. COVID vaccines, what we are taking right now as we speak, today and every day, Santita. Development of the polio vaccine, genetic mapping, all of this can be tied back to those cells of Henrietta Lacks, a black woman whose cells and tissues were taken from her without her consent, without her family's consent, and she ultimately died of cervical cancer. So when we talk about COVID vaccines, we talk about Johnson & Johnson, one of the companies that, as we know, has produced or sponsored, all of them paid billions of dollars for their COVID vaccines. But Nate Van Moore is going to talk to us and give us an update on the litigation and the developments in the talcum powder litigation and Johnson & Johnson's efforts to circumvent paying many of those verdicts that are out there against them because of their product, the Johnson & Johnson baby powder that many of us use. Black and brown women were so much the victims of that talcum powder. And now that there have been verdicts, they're filing for bankruptcy protection. So, Nate Van Ward, can you update us on what's happening with that litigation and Johnson & Johnson's effort to circumvent paying those verdicts?
Wait a minute, and if I may jump in here, Johnson & Johnson targeted black women in their ad campaigns, right, CK?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I just thought I'd jump in right there, Navan, because that was unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and first of all, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
CK has a beautiful way of wording things. This is such a terrible bow of mixing in both of the Henrietta Latch and the Johnson Johnson story together, because it does show an unfortunate trend that we are seeing and we continue to see in the healthcare community, where Black women are targeted, minorities are targeted, and their feelings, their pain is not taken serious. And what we see with the Johnson and Johnson situation, the baby powder case, where women, and particularly women of color, when they were using and continue to use, in some instances, baby powder for hygiene use, the particles we've shown, and the science has shown, can get into the fallopian tubes, into the ovaries, and cause ovarian cancer. And we've had multiple trials that juries have held Johnson & Johnson accountable for. And in the evidence we've had in those trials have shown how Johnson & Johnson targeted minorities. There is a two-page document, two-page exhibit that we've used in many of these trials, which shows how Johnson & Johnson, on one hand, says that, hey, because of the increased risk of ovarian cancer with the use of talcum powder, our cells may very well go down. But on the other hand, in that same document, as far as major opportunities, it talks about two groups of women who use Johnson & Johnson on a much more regular basis than others. We want to triple our marketing efforts with African Americans and double our marketing efforts with Hispanics. And it's really amazing at the fact that Johnson & Johnson knows how serious ovarian cancer is, and yet they want to target these minority communities in order to continue selling. And not only that, once we catch them and once we take them to trial and once we hold them accountable, they have employed a tactic to get out of being held liable by using a bankruptcy system now to avoid liability. We, as CK said before, we were both co-counseling our opioid cases, and we've seen, unfortunately, this trend starting to happen where Purdue and the Sattler family utilized bankruptcy to get out of paying and compensating the victims in the opioid litigation, and now we see Johnson & Johnson. I don't think it's a stretch to say that Johnson & Johnson, of all companies, is not in need for any money. They are one of the most wealthiest companies in the world, and yet they are trying to use, and they filed bankruptcy papers in order to essentially not pay and not compensate the victims of this unfortunate Johnson & Johnson baby powder ovarian cancer disaster, where many of the victims are minority women who they specifically targeted. And that document I mentioned goes way back to 1992, and these are efforts that they have done over the years since the 70s, 80s, 90s. And it's quite frankly just another way that we see that our minority women are devalued and not held in any type of priority, as again, Johnson Johnson used these tactics to get out of being held accountable for the atrocity that they've been doing.
CK, unless they want to make money off of us. I mean, because that is, to me, that's the issue that we're seeing with. I mean, this is modern day, but it's also modern day. What happened with Henrietta Lacks? I mean, this is not just a movie. This is not just a book.
Now, this is real life, Santita. And, the same thing, Nathan, we talked about this before as well. Tobacco litigation, the exact same thing. They targeted the Black community, but they also targeted Black women that they said, especially welfare women. And I'm not giving you the exact quote, but I remember a document that we use in tobacco litigation. There was a document that said a Negro welfare mother, because that's what they were. These documents go back to the 20s and 30s and 40s. A Negro welfare mother would rather buy cigarettes than put food on the table for her children. And those statistics, those documents, and their analysis caused them to pump more advertising in our community so that they could target the least of these, because they knew at the time something we didn't know, which was that tobacco and nicotine was addictive. Mm-hmm. So they knew if they got into our community, got into the least these people who didn't have a lot of options, they would just buy the cigarettes over and over because they were addicts. They were addicted to the nicotine. So it's the same thing. It's the pain, Santita and Nevan and Dr. Deborah Verholden, of Black women, minority women being targeted for experimentation. But here we have with Henrietta Lacks, just like Nevan said and Santita, how you said, someone whose cells have been the most profitable cells in modern medicine, most profitable. So we're not talking about, medical research. We're talking about money.
Well, what happened?
Profits over people.
What happened? She was a Black woman who had cervical cancer. Tell us what happened. We got about 5 minutes here.
We've got to think about segregation. We have to put our minds in the time of segregation where we, Black men and Black women, we couldn't just walk into a hospital and get treatment. So believe it or not, and I say this because Dr. Deborah Verholden, I know of your superlative training in medicine, she was being trained and being treated by Johns Hopkins. That's the irony of this. By Johns Hopkins. She was being treated there. She had cervical cancer. Unbeknownst to her, her tissue was taken from her tumor, was taken from her before she died from cervical cancer. The open question, did their experimentation on her when she was alive, this is when she was alive, did that accelerate at all her death? She had cervical cancer. This was 1951. Prognosis probably wasn't good, but that's just an open question. Her cells were harvested and developed because, and this is before you had all these consent procedures that we have now in medicine. And so what they realized was that they could harvest her cells. And while other people who were being tested on and experimented on, their cells would simply die over time or shortly after being removed, hers survived, and they thrived in laboratories. She had exceptional quality in her cells. And I'm going to ask Dr. Deborah Verholden, who's an epidemiologist who understands this probably better than I. I'm just looking at it from a legal standpoint. And they continue to cultivate and harvest, and those cells are cultivated and harvesting indefinitely. They're immortal. They will never die. This will always continue. And it's so relevant to the conversation. So let's talk about the money that was made. For one company, Thermo Fisher Scientific, Inc., $35 billion in annual revenue that it is believed can be attributed to her cells today.
Annual revenue every year.
Annual revenue today. That's just one entity. And there are likely going to be other entities, and that's what this litigation is about. My good friend, Nevan's good friend, Ben Crump, is one of the lawyers on this case representing the family in this litigation, as well as other lawyers. It's going to be very interesting. This is a case that would have emanated ostensibly from 1951. That's when the negligence, that's when the wrongful acts took place. But the knowledge of it was not in 1951. They just realized a lot of it, and that's why there's a cause of action. That's why there's a case right now. Just like as in how Johnson & Johnson, Nevan talked about the 70s, the 80s, and 90s. They had those studies. They were marketing to Black and brown women. They knew the impact of talcum powder. It happened early on. The litigation is now because of the knowledge, say with tobacco, the knowledge that has come to, and also people dying or having problems as a result of this. Well, the Henrietta Lacks, the truth of it has just come to light. So that's
Well,
why there's litigation.
it's unbelievable. CK, we only have a couple of minutes, and I know Attorney Ward is going to have to leave us. What are your closing thoughts about this? I mean, we're not closing. This is to be continued because this J&J litigation is ongoing. They're declaring bankruptcy. Well, what's next?
Well, there's going to be a fight over. They're going to declare bankruptcy. They're filing for bankruptcy protection, and then all of these verdicts, all these judgments, and all these people who are entitled to resolution on their cases, they'll have to stand in line like other creditors. And there's going to be a fight about that. So more litigation is forthcoming. And I just want, Santita, your listeners to understand the significance of what these trials mean, what the process of litigation is, how it begins. I'm going to call it the anatomy of a trial, Santita. Mm-hmm. The anatomy of a trial. I think it's important for all of us to understand what it is when we have these cases, what the process is. We've got Ahmaud Arbery's case right now. Those 3 defendants that killed Ahmaud Arbery, voir dire or jury selection is happening right now as we speak. Today in Georgia. So I think it's important for us to understand the complete context of all these cases. Their significance from beginning to end. Henrietta Lacks's lawsuit was just filed.
Well, let's talk about that.
Cases.
When we get on the other side, I want us to talk about that because people need to know about the Henrietta Lacks case. It's more than a movie, everybody. It's more than a book. It's real, it's ongoing, and the fact that she went in just to get well and her cells were taken from her, the cells won't die. There's something poetic about that, something biblical, really. And her cells continue to live, and they continue to give other people life. And yet her family cannot get any compensation. First of all, they took the cells without their permission. Wrong.
30.
They've made no money, but Big Pharma continues to make money. How does that work? 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. How does that work? That everybody makes money off of Henrietta Lacks but Henrietta Lacks and her estate. How's that supposed to work? You got to tell me something. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show. Legal Q&A with CK. They should be making some money, everybody. What do you think? Back in just a minute. And Dr. Deb, you got to jump in. Ooh, it's too much. Attorney Ward, I want to thank you for being with us today.
Thank you for having me again. I think this is a really good follow-up to, unfortunately, when I last was on, I said this is what we think that they're going to do.
You did.
And since that time frame, they actually did it. And it's only been a week. And so, I really want to be able to emphasize that Senator Warren has a bill out that will address this bankruptcy issue to not allow companies to get away with this. And we need our listeners, our audience to call their representatives, their Congress people, and tell them to support this bill. It's in both the House and the Senate.
What's the name of the bill?
The name of the bill is a bankruptcy bill that she's put out, and it's different versions in both the Senate and the House. Congressman Durbin and others have co-sponsored it. And so essentially it's a bankruptcy, Elizabeth Warren's bankruptcy bill is what it's been referred to.
Okay.
I know I'm going through security, and so I don't know if I want to how much longer.
Well, look, we're going to let you go because CK told us that you'd be able to stay with us until about the bottom of the hour. So that's what this says. But we're looking forward to having you come back.
I'll definitely try to stay on. I'm going to put it on mute.
Okay.
And I'm going to put it on mute because I want to be a part of it.
Okay, absolutely. Well, just put yourself on mute, and we will come back to you.
All right.
And Nathan, thank you so much. Thank you so much for giving us an update. I know. It's just tragic. It really is just tragic. It's tragic. But we have to fight these fights, Santita. We have to fight these fights. And I know a lot of times people hear the end, like they hear, oh, there's litigation, someone got a big verdict.
Well,
But
now,
they may not understand all that it took.
well, a little bit of housekeeping is we're going to do we're going to talk about the anatomy of a trial in the last 5 minutes of this segment, but let's get into Henrietta Lacks. We've got Stephanie from Kankakee who was called, and I want you to go get I sent you the time.gov, and that'll put you on the same clock as I am on, okay?
Right, I have it, yeah.
Okay, great. And you'll, of course, you're on Eastern time, I'm on Central time, but you'll see, because we're out, we're going to close up at 57 so I can get out at 58, okay? Dr. Deb, you there?
Okay. Yep, I'm here.
Okay, we're going to be coming to you. Michael Ann wants to know, how were her cells taken without her knowledge? That's your wheelhouse, but we want to get your thoughts about this case, and it's so much. Oh, you got every day. Gee whiz. I mean, and then I just came across this information, CK and Dr. Deb, that part of the compromise on Build Back Better, because, they're going to eliminate 2 years of free community college. Now they're going to have black and brown people fighting at each other because they're going to put they're going to pitting Hispanic serving colleges against HBCUs.
Which makes no sense. The Morrell Act was supposed to cover all of those, which are technically considered land-grant institutions. Mm-hmm. And if they're doing that, probably the Asian Pacific
coming back in 15
institutions will be added to the fray. Mm-hmm. Totally disgusting.
Oh, it is. I'm like, is this the best you all could come up with? While the you give the Pentagon $10 billion they didn't even ask for? Stand by.
5.
Ridiculous.
We can change the world, change the world, change the world. We can change the world, we can change the world, change the world.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
War and hate to a place of love, it's not too late. Gotta save the children, we can't wait. Let's change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show, Legal Q&A with CK. I know you all have a lot of legal questions, but boy, is this fascinating. Michael Ann asked a question, how were Henrietta Lacks cells taken without her knowledge? The Santita Jackson Show on WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. We've heard about the latest on the J&J case on baby powder that women use to keep themselves fresh and clean, but it didn't do that. It gave us cancer. And now they're trying to file for bankruptcy. We're staying on top of that case with Attorney Navan Ward and, of course, Attorney C.K. Hoffler. We brought on Dr. Deborah Furr-Holt and Attorney Hoffler, just to look at this. But Attorney Hoffler, Michael Ann wants to know, I guess this is her wheelhouse, how were her cells taken without her knowledge? I mean, what procedure? And, was she supposed to know just legally before you go to Dr. Furr-Holt and Attorney Hoffler? Are you supposed to get permission? Or does this predate that?
Well, now we have consent procedures that are used in medicine today. Like if we have surgery, we have to consent. Back then, there may not have been consent procedures, but you had to, of course, ask permission to take tissue and use it. So even though the family or she did not consent or get permission for them to do that, they should have let her know that they were doing that. And because there is some evidence that of course she had cervical cancer, what would be called cervical cancer, and her condition was getting worse, but it appeared to accelerate. So there might be some evidence that comes out regarding that. So how did they do it? They just did it. We have to think, 1951. Heck, they were doing that, 20 years ago without people's consent. So I think that it's an excellent question that is going to be explored in this litigation. How were they able to do it? They just did it. They didn't get her consent, because this is 1951. Black folks, we couldn't go into most hospitals. So if we were, like my grandmother during that time, you were an experiment. You were part of a study. And they just did what they wanted to do. You didn't sign any papers. You just went in and thought you were getting medical treatment. So It was wrong. It was improper. Even though John Hopkins maintains that it didn't sell or didn't make money off of her cells. That's John Hopkins' position today. But a lot of people are making money and are profiting and have patented the ways of using her cells. Billions of dollars, maybe even trillions of dollars when added up. So they just did it without her consent, without telling her, without informing her. And that's a travesty of this. And now this litigation is disgorging the full amount of the net profits obtained by commercializing the HeLa cells, because they're commercialized now. So this litigation is saying, we want to know all the money, we want to disgorge, and going forward, they want Thermo Fisher Scientific, who's the main defendant, to be permanently enjoined, or prevented from using the HeLa cells without the estate's permission. So it's not just disgorgement of the money made in the past. It's going forward. They want the estate to be involved in the process and for them to obtain permission. So this is serious litigation because it was a serious wrong that was done. People may have seen the movie, The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. It was an HBO movie. Oprah Winfrey actually portrayed her daughter. And the lawsuit, just ironically, and it was timed, I'm sure, to happen this way, was filed exactly 70 years after the day she died. On October 4th of 1951, 70 years later, October 4th, 2021, the lawsuit was filed.
You know, but I have to tell you, I've got calls coming in from all over. Before we get to the callers, if you don't mind, Attorney Hoffler, I want to ask Dr. Deborah Verholden how this happened. I mean, just because I'm wondering, was she treated as a patient or as an experiment?
Well, this is not uncommon that, especially in those days and times, that people would, in the course of treatment, especially a place like Johns Hopkins, which is where I did all of my studies, right? They're a Research 1 institution. You know, I don't know if you've heard this. It's called the R1 designation. These are research-intensive places. I always tell people, if you are getting your tonsils out, I would not go to Johns Hopkins. Why? Because it's going to be 20 residents, med students, fellows, you know, all being trained. It's going to be a big hubbub and all of that. If you had twins that were joined at birth and you needed them separated, I would go to Johns Hopkins because that's where you're going to get the most innovative, cutting edge, you know, all of that. So when you talk about routine care in places like this, they're always training and they're always doing research. Always, always, always. And this notion that they took her cells without her knowledge, that's a harder one for me to wrap my head around because I don't know if you've ever had a punch biopsy or something like that. What it is they likely took those cells without her permission to use them for research. You know, when people are sick, you want this thing COVID. You want every possible treatment available to you, especially if the prognosis is bad, right? And so I don't know, CK would know more than me, but whatever was happening, there's now a process. And you're supposed to ask people if you can use their samples for research. When my granddaughter was born, I literally watched them squeeze the blood out of her umbilical cord and put it in a vial. I said, where are y'all going with my granddaughter's cord blood? And they said, oh, you'll have to sign a form and, you know, for it, you know, if you don't want us to use it. I said, not only do I not want you to use it, I would like that vial.
How about that?
You don't get to whisk it away and then me say you don't get to use it and you possibly use it. That's the kind of, you know, mistrust that things like the case of Henrietta Lacks has engendered. The problem that I have is it's one thing that they took the cells and that they used them at Johns Hopkins. Maybe somebody could justify and say, we took those cells in the course of trying to figure out how to best treat her. Whatever the case may be, that's fine. But at the point when it became commercial use without permission is tantamount to theft. And I know for a fact, I had somebody steal my laptop. That person took my laptop to a pawn shop. The pawn shop didn't erase it. Somebody then bought the laptop. This was like 3 weeks later. As soon as they turned that laptop on and it went on a Wi-Fi network, I got an alert. iCloud that my laptop had been located. I immediately called the police and presented myself at that person's house and said, you are in possession of my laptop. I had my receipt from Apple, the serial number, a picture of me on it, everything. And that person ultimately, the police had took the laptop, and then I ultimately had my laptop returned to me.
Wow.
And that person had in their mind legitimately purchased that laptop, but it was obtained illegally. So in my world, and I'm not a lawyer, single human being, every company that has used these cells and every product that they made from them used them illegally. And her family should be compensated. What we don't talk about also is many people in her family live still to this day in extreme poverty. And how this whole thing came to light is they went back to the family and said, yes, we want to get some of y'all's blood. Because they thought if her cells are like this, I wonder if there are others in her family whose cells function the same way.
Boy.
I wonder if it's a genetic link. That's how this stuff all came to light. So I just think it's really deplorable and disgusting, and it's an ethical violation, and the fact that so much money has been generated. And God bless her for the real life-saving work that her cells have been able to enable and across the world. I mean, this is a global phenomenon, and that is a beautiful thing. That's a separate and distinct issue from the use of her cells in this way, and the commercialization of them required consent, permission, and some kind of remuneration to the family. And it's not up to the companies to decide what they're willing to pay. They obtained the cells illegally and didn't have proper ownership of them to even use them, let alone commercialize them. So I'm really excited for this. I know C.K. Hawker is the one to set things straight if it's possible. I know CK will get it done.
Amen to that.
Well, this is a classic. You know, Dr. Deborah, thank you so much for those kind comments. But this is a classic: profits before people, putting profits over people. And just so that you all know, I don't know if people are aware that there was a group of white doctors at Johns Hopkins in the early 1950s. This is what the evidence will show in this case, that allegedly preyed on Black women with cervical cancer, cutting away tissue samples from their patients' cervixes without their patients' knowledge or consent. Mm-hmm. So Henrietta Lacks was one of many. And in the process, they discovered these magical cells, immortal cells. But there were many, many Black women, the evidence is allegedly going to show in this case, that were preyed upon. And Johns Hopkins wasn't the only medical institution doing that.
You know, let's go to Renee from Chicago. Ooh, this is a whole lot to take in today, CK. This is a lot, CK. And Dr. Deborah for holding. It's a lot. It's a lot. Renee, what's on your mind today?
Good morning. Thanks for taking my call. And my name is pronounced Marquita.
Marquita.
So Renee.
Thank you.
Marquita. You're welcome. But in listening to the conversation and hearing about the unethical practices of Johnson & Johnson, not just that they knew their product was causing cancer, yet they continue to market it to Black women in the United States and brown women and poor women. They then took their product and started marketing in Africa. So it sounds to me like some racism is going on there, not very hidden racism at that. And with those practices and with the sales that they won't pay the family for, that they took without the family's knowledge, this leads to why I think there's so much distrust even in people with this experiment, with the COVID vaccines, because they built up a record of distrust. If you look at the history of what they've done, and my daughter, she graduated from Vanderbilt, and she learned there about all the experiments they did on Black women there, with not giving them
Anesthesia.
Not giving them what they needed when they were anesthesia. Thank you. When they were going through childbirth, just to see if they could withstand the pain, and just different things that they've done to specifically Black women. And it's just built up a case for not trusting them. And the FDA, the same thing. They've pushed foods that they knew were bad for us that in other countries they're banned. I don't know. It just all ties together for me. Thanks for taking my call.
No, thank you, C. You guys together. Let's go to Stephanie from Kankakee. Stephanie.
Hi. Johnson & Johnson is just a bad company. A friend of mine, and she's white, had 7 operations after their mesh product went really bad. And now what they do is they send these companies, it takes 9 years for the lawsuit to come through with them. They send companies to loan you money until, your lawsuit comes through. And guess who's in the affiliate owning those companies? So you end up paying them back a lot of money, waiting on your lawsuit. But they've got almost $1 billion for their mesh product that have ruined women's, period, lives. And so Johnson & Johnson has had history of just being a bad company.
C.K. Hoffler. What do you do when you see, as we continue to peel back these layers, we go back to Dr. Marion Sims, who was the father of American gynecology. He did this and worse on Black women who were enslaved. He performed the medical experiments in all women, every color you can imagine, getting a medical exam and having an experiment performed upon you without anesthesia. But he would perform these same procedures on white women, and he would give them, give them medicine. Oh, I'm hearing some background noise, Paul. Okay. Okay. You know what? I think that's Stephanie. We have to put her on hold. Okay. I mean, what are we to make of this? I mean, there's a history here. I mean, can you bring this kind of history into court, or is this just something you need to know?
Well, I think it's two things. One, yes, you can bring it into court if it's relevant to the case at hand. I do think, and Stephanie raised some excellent issues. One thing that we know, whether it was talcum powder or anything, the same products that were unleashed on the American market were sent to Africa, the Caribbean, South and Latin America, particularly if the target audience were Black and brown women. But there's another component, the defective products, meaning products that could not clear FDA approval. They were defective. Something was wrong with it. They were also sent to developing countries. Defective products. Why? Because some of these companies understood they're not going to get in the lawsuits. Those countries are not going to file litigation against them. They're just happy to get the product. So the deceptive and inexcusable behavior of some of the corporations and unleashing products that they knew had carcinogens in them and that could lead to cancer without disclosing that's well known. The pain of Black women, you talked about the person who was credited with being the master, the innovator of gynecology, modern day gynecology, experimented on Black women. That's well known, without giving them painkillers, performing surgery on them, doing intricate procedures, just the pain. But I can tell you, we can trace it back to today. Why do I say that? One of my practice areas is medical negligence. I cannot tell you, Santita and Dr. Deborah Verholden, how many cases I review and how many cases that I've actually taken on and litigated where the women's cries of pain were completely ignored. Black women's cries of pain when they're going into the labor and delivery to deliver their children. Their cries of pain of where they're experiencing the pain ignored, and as a result, in one case, the mother and the baby died because neither the nurses nor the doctors took their cries of pain seriously. Quote, in one deposition, we just thought she was being a drama queen, close quote, said a nurse. And that mother died, and so did her child. So this is real. This is real. We have to be, I always want to be, Santita, transparent when we're talking about the legal issues. There are legal cases that emerge, civil rights cases or breach of contract cases, such as what you see in Henrietta Lacks. Breach of contract, theft, misappropriation. Why is there misappropriation? Well, there is intellectual property surrounding the cells, the cloning of those cells. They're patents. That's intellectual property that some companies are making. I don't even know if it's good. What comes after trillion? I don't even know what it is. So much money day in and day out on the cells of Henrietta Lacks. That's number one. So those are breach of contract, misappropriation, theft, civil theft. These are all civil cases, not criminal cases, civil cases. Then you have medical negligence cases. Cases where, someone goes, like I said, goes into the emergency room or goes to labor and delivery. Their cries of pain are ignored. They're not seen for a long time. They're shoved in the corner. They have sepsis or infection that's growing, and they die right there, and their child dies completely preventable. Deviation of the standard of care for labor and delivery and for those doctors who are tending to the patient. That's medical negligence. So there are lots of legal cases and legal recourse. Talcum powder case, deceptive practices, deceiving the public, knowing one thing, not disclosing it. Same with tobacco, same with opioids. You knew these things would cause cancer. You didn't disclose that they would cause cancer. You induced people to use your product that you knew was causing cancer. And then you got caught with your pants down and got verdicts against you. And now, in the case of Johnson & Johnson and the talcum powder, you're filing for bankruptcy protection. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, bankruptcy is protection. That protects you, protects your assets. That's what these corporations do when they get caught with their pants down, some of them.
Well, hold on. Before we go, because we only have about 5 minutes here, a couple of minutes to you, Dr. Deb, because you just had this experience with your beautiful granddaughter, India, who belongs to all of the Morning Stars. She belongs to all of us. You, Dr. Deborah Verholden, you're one of the most esteemed epidemiologists in the world. And you have incredible respect. So how is a layperson who's in a delivery room or who might be outside of the surgical theater, how do you protect your loved one? I mean, because you said, wait, where's that blood going? Where's it? No. As a matter of fact, give it to me. How do you what should you do in a situation like that? And you're not in the surgical theater.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because, we're supposed to have protections in place now to prevent things like that, from happening. And we do. We all need advocates in the healthcare system and in healthcare settings. Why? Because for many of us, at the point when we're in a surgical room or in a labor and delivery room, we're at one of these real critical times in our life. And oftentimes people are not the best self-advocate at those moments. So you do need loved ones and you do need people to advocate for you. What I can tell people is now we have rights. You would think what happened to Henrietta Lacks should never happen again. There is a lot in place to prevent and avoid things like that. But unfortunately, I don't think these systems will stop bad actors. And I don't think it's 100% against the will of individuals. Because all it would take is for one kind of rogue researcher. And this stuff comes up all the time. They got a hit list at the NIH of people who have been, accused or found guilty of certain types of egregious acts when it comes to violation of protection of human subjects or research protocols. And, I'd be happy to talk about this at another time. But my point is, bad actors exist. And so we just have to be advocates. You have the right to say no. You have the right to say no. And I encourage people, do not just sign a bunch of forms for yourself or for your loved one when you have procedures that are happening. If you don't understand the form, the hospital is required to have someone come and break every single part of it down for you. I read all of the forms when my daughter had her baby, and some of the things I said, I just simply can't agree to that. So there were a couple of the forms where I crossed things out. I said, I will not agree to that, and I will not agree to that. You know, Santita, you said your mom didn't want y'all getting all these vaccines all at once. They tried to load my grandbaby up with a whole lot of stuff before we left. I said, we're not doing that.
Well, no, but that was...
I already got the schedule. We talked to her pediatrician.
Yeah.
Y'all are not, she can get this one vaccine. The rest of them, her pediatrician will handle. We've already figured out what her schedule is going to look like.
Well, but the schedule,
why y'all are doing that.
When I was a child, which was 1,000 years ago, my mother said the schedule was different. It's changed. Now they just put a lot, well, it was 1,000 years ago. They put a lot on you. She said, now, if I were a mother today, I'd have to have another thing. She said, because we didn't even have to do that 40, 50 years ago. Yep, I'm dating myself, but praise God, I'm still here. I got the last minute and a half that belongs to you. Hey, I am good, okay? Thank you, God. My father said, if you don't like birthdays, try missing one. How about that? Right. Attorney C.K. Hoffler, the last minute and a half belongs to you, and it is 90 seconds.
Okay. Well, what we're going to do is we want to keep everyone posted. We're going to start a series called The Anatomy of Trial. We've got the Ahmaud Arbery case coming. We've got the Henrietta Lacks case. We want everyone to understand what it means when you go through trial, when you hear these cases. The anatomy of a trial, that's not my phrase, but really what it means is going through the key phrases, the key phases of jury trial. Like right now with Ahmaud Arbery, they're picking a jury. It's going to take about 2.5 weeks. Voir dire. What does that mean? Why is it important? Why must you vote? Why must you show up for jury trials, for trial service? Opening statements, what do they mean? Directing cross-examination and closing arguments. Why is there some evidence that could be so important you feel left out of a trial? Why is it not going to a jury? All of those things, because we just want you to be informed. All of us are part, whether we like the criminal justice system some kind of way. Family member got in trouble, we got in trouble. Something that we've done, didn't do, inadvertent or not, we need to make sure that you are well informed. And that's what we're going to do here, Santita. On going forward, we're going to do the anatomy of a trial so that everybody understands and has the ability to ask questions.
And know what your rights are, everybody. Know what your rights are. Dr. Deborah Holden, we just got what a lesson we just got from you today. Know what your rights are. We get these lessons from Attorney C.K. Hoffler all the time, and from you, Dr. Deborah Holden, and Attorney Navan Ward, and Pastor Vicki Johnson, everybody at 80th and Jeffrey. Please go there at 11:45 on Sunday. I'm Santita Jackson. Can't wait to be back with you tomorrow. It's such a blessing to be with you. We're going to talk for a couple more minutes on the Santita Jackson Show on the YouTube channel and Santita Jackson and Friends. I love you, everybody. God bless you. Ooh, have a wonderful day.
Everyone, everywhere, take the time.
CK, Dr. Deborah Holden, is there anything else you want to say before we go?
No, I want to know when this anatomy of a trial is going to happen. CK, you going to walk us through a particular trial and break it down for us along the way?
That's what I'm.
This is exciting.
Well, we're going to use the Ahmaud Arbery trial. It's going on right now. Mm-hmm. So, and we're going to use live cases, and we should also follow the Henrietta Lacks case, because I'd like people to understand these cases that are in our community. We see stuff on television, and, corporate media has a way of presenting information. I want to present it from the standpoint of what's happened from a legal standpoint. Mm-hmm. What does this mean when you hear this? Why is this coming in? Why is it not coming in? Why is it taking 2.5 weeks or 2 months or 5 months to pick a jury? All of these things, I think, can inform our knowledge and comfort level when we or our family members are part of the legal system. Because whether we like it or not, we find ourselves in that position. So we're going to start that series, Dr. Deb. And the first is going to be voir dire, which is picking a jury. And Santita, I think we can, and we'll continue, updates on other cases and other legal matters. But we want to start that as sort of an educational tool. Mm-hmm. The anatomy of a trial, all the key parts of a trial. So we could start that next week.
We're going to start it next week. There were just so many issues that we wanted to tackle at one time. And CK, we've been working with each other, trying to continue to perfect this because, hey, now we're in the middle of Build Back Better, and they pulled back on that. But there's so much information that you need that, we just said, some things just have to take priority. Chaparral said, CK, I'm excited for this series. Everybody's excited for this series. People want to be able to walk through. This was CK's idea. She said, we need to do an anatomy of a trial. People need to know how what the sausage making. That's how I put it. You need to know. You need to know what goes into it. And just like Dr. Deborah Verholden said, wait a minute. If you are in the room with your loved one who's having a baby, and they take the cord blood, whoa, 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 you have the right to say, wait, stop. No. Where's that going? Well, we'll hold it until you sign the papers. No, give that to me right now. Now, I'm wondering if they would have given it to a layperson, a Dr. Deborah Verholden, because I mean, you are a big cheese. Seriously.
Probably not. They would have, or they would have. We'll get to it. Maybe what we have, all kind of humming and hawing, and I stutter and everything. Probably not. Or they would say, "I got to talk to the doctor. We'll get back to you." And then, you just had a baby, and you, quite frankly, are focused on the baby, and they're trying to get you up to walk so they can get you out of there.
Well, okay. They want us to go 4 hours a day. I love you. Yes. Okay. Well, you know what? The show continues to grow, and if you want the show to be longer, you should contact the station and let them know that. That having been said, I'm going to have to release the studio because they have another show coming in here. But I want to thank all of you for tuning in and continue to like and share. CK, everybody wants to hear about the anatomy of a trial, and they have a lot of legal questions because it's amazing. Dr. Deborah Verholden, the law impacts every area of our lives. Our health care covers every aspect of our lives. And so what we try to do on this show is give you some information, give you the relevant information that can help you along your way, because you have more rights than you know. You have rights that you don't even know. And that's what we want. We want you to be informed. We want you to be informed. Dr. Deb, do you have anything else you want to tell people?
No, I'm excited. I'm excited about the anatomy of a trial. I love it. I think the more people understand about how things work, the more empowered they can be, and the more of an advocate and a champion they can be for themselves and make better decisions about some of their voting choices. People need to understand how things work. That should guide their decision making. So I'm excited, CK.
Well, you know what? But I want you to do the same thing something similar in health. Because we don't know what our rights are when we go into the hospital. I think it was Lorraine who said she was in the middle of an emergency C-section, and they were shoving all these papers under her nose while she's about to have an emergency C-section. And she said, "Wait a minute." She said,
"All the time.
They tried hustling papers to me right before an emergency section."
They gotta get treated.
Well, this is what she said. Amen. They tried hustling papers to me right before the emergency C-section in the middle of doctors nursing and swirling around my husband. And he said, "Oh, no, you're not going to shove papers at my wife who's medicated and anxious, and I'm standing right here." He said, "Let me see and read these papers. It's my child." I mean, wow.
Yep.
But what about people who are alone, Dr.
Honestly,
Deb?
all of that should be done in advance. All of that. We had a birth plan. We had, we'd already made all of these decisions in advance, right? We had read most of the paperwork. I asked for this stuff. There's some things did get shoved in our face in real time, but that's why I was there. And I'm like, let me just go ahead and read through this.
Okay.
And so, but yeah, it's unfortunate because, especially with having a baby, all of the possible outcomes are known at the beginning. They're all known. None of it is a surprise, right? It'll go how it'll go, but none of the possible outcomes are random or unknown, right? And so people should be able to have these conversations, have these discussions, get these forms and all of that well before they even get close to delivery. There's no reason to shove that stuff in people's face in the labor and delivery room. They should have already contemplated it and know all of that beforehand.
But you know what? Can you walk us through what we need to know? Like if you're going to have a baby, if you're going to have an appendectomy. Well, no one really signs up for that. That's generally an emergency. But what your rights are in the hospital, Dr. Deb?
Yeah, it's funny because there's what your rights are, and then there's what actually happens in practice. And then there's a tremendous inequity in what happens in practice, right?
Oh, yeah.
So some people will experience those rights live and in living color, and other people just simply won't. They just simply won't. How it's supposed to go is not how it goes for them. And it's because no one's watching, no one's paying attention, no one's holding people to account. And we talk a lot in healthcare about implicit bias. And I do believe that that's real. But there's also a fair amount of explicit bias that doesn't go addressed. We don't do a good enough job at bringing a scalpel to our healthcare system and our healthcare setting and getting rid of people who have histories and documented behavior of maltreatment against certain patients. And it's not just the Black and brown patients. People with chronic conditions, people with disabilities, people with public health insurance, all of these things. We've got now a mountain of data that says these people get treated differently in the healthcare system. But we don't hold the people to account who treat them differently. You know, it's not a system, right? We talk about a system. That system is built on and comprised of people. It's people who are enacting the bad acts. The system supports it, but the people are the actual, and the providers are the ones that are actually doing this stuff. And we need a lot more in place to be able to identify and then address bad actors.
Chaparral said when she miscarried her twins, the hospital kept drugging her up, and she knew she was hemorrhaging. And if it wasn't for her aunt coming in and demanding another doctor to help her, she said she probably wouldn't be here. That's unbelievable. No, it's totally believable. And it's just, I had life-saving surgery in 2004. And I have to tell you, it drove me crazy. My father did something he never does. CK knows this so well. He took a week off. He actually went to San Francisco with me. He was with me from the first visit with the doctor to, he went to Africa, I think, I had been in the hospital about a week. And then my mother was there. She was there for a few days, and she had to come back to Chicago. But then she came back. Renee Ferguson, who really saved my life, the well-known reporter here in Chicago, Emmy Award-winning investigative reporter, she was with me the whole time. And then my brother Yusuf was there. And then my college roommate Phoebe came in. And then my old babysitter, Jan, came in. I have to tell you, the apartment was full. And so was my hospital room. And my Aunt Connie spent the night at the hospital with me. She stayed with me. She lives in San Francisco, Oakland. I have to tell you, it drove me crazy. And my Aunt Connie, who's a certified nutritionist, she frightened my surgeons to death because she just raised hell. What are you feeding her? What medicine is this? I mean, they were looking like, who is this woman? But I had all these people, but I can look, my father said, because, you're kind of tired and, you don't feel, I wasn't on any painkillers. They'd removed my gallbladder and appendix and moved me around inside. So I was in a lot of pain, right? But, it was life-saving, so I was willing to do it. And I'm not given to doing a lot of complaining. But my father said, let me tell you something, baby. Be very grateful that everybody is here advocating for you. He said, that's too few people have advocates. He said, that's why Daddy goes to see people in the hospital, because you need an advocate. I wasn't complaining, but he saw that look in my eye like, if these folks don't get out of this room, and these are all people I love, but you need that, everybody. Do not ever leave a loved one in the hospital without your being there. Don't ever do it. Don't ever do it. That's what's so frightening to me about COVID. Having both our parents in the hospital at the same time, and we couldn't see them. What? Oh, that was awful. Awful.
Well, we know, we got some of the data that shows that during COVID, people were disproportionately, Black and brown people were disproportionately being assigned DNR, do not resuscitate orders. And Black people are notoriously a no to DNR. They just don't, the mistrust and the notion that, oh, you'll just let me go so you can take my organs, or, they're like, no, I want every life-saving measure, available, right? And that's just, there's percentages, we could talk about that. That's not the case for every single human being. But if you look at the rates of DNRs, where people have assigned them and endorsed them pre-COVID, they were much lower than the DNRs that we saw for COVID patients during the pandemic. But watch this. The person, many times, they will come to the hospital, they are severely ill. And then if you go on a ventilator, you get intubated, these people are not conscious. So who is signing the DNR? Nobody. You've got some cases where it's a healthcare paraprofessional, so-called having a conversation with a family member since the family members weren't allowed in the hospital, and so-called the family members say, yeah, we'll do a DNR, and then that's what's happening. It's just all this kind of stuff that we've got to keep an eye on. And we need to do a better job with the data and the mandatory reporting, because the data would reveal a lot, but we've got to have access to it, and we've got to be looking at it. But yeah, that I know for a fact that happened in COVID.
Well, look, I reported it because it came out, and it was one of those stories that just kind of went under the radar. But that's why you all are here. This means so much because you all giving us the information that we need.
I published on this in like June of last year. We published on it, trying to really bring to light, this issue around bias in the healthcare system.
I only have 2 more minutes, you guys.
Has to get addressed. Like, it just has to get addressed.
Well, this sounds like a Monday night call, CK, and another story, another show. Okay.
Absolutely.
Oh,
absolutely.
CK, we're forever in your debt. We're forever in your debt because most of us cannot afford a lawyer, let alone someone who is the best at it. Most of us cannot afford access. We just don't have access to the brilliance and the expertise of Dr. Deborah Fur Holden. But the beauty and the greatness of these women is this: they put service above everything else. And as my father often says, Push can't afford to pay me, but I can't afford not to be here because our people need us. And I want to thank you for all that you do, Dr. Deborah Fur Holden, for all that you do. Legal Q&A with CK. CK, you're going to be on Court TV this week. Just very quickly. We should have said that on the air.
I should, but you know what? I'll be on Court TV next week. I was on Monday and Tuesday, and I'll be on again next week.
Well, everybody, let's look at Court TV. Because CK's been on Court TV a whole lot, so we love it. So I'm gonna go so I can release this studio so we can get these other people in. But I love you all so much. Wow, how great. This was great. And love you, everybody. See you tomorrow on the Santita Jackson Show. I love you. Bye-bye. Thank you, CK.